It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?
What are you guys dressed up as for Halloween? Just wondering.
That was odd. Renato had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. At this time, there were so many more Ravens. Renato hoped his mother wasn't watching. Renato thought of the Iblis stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.
still no sign of Lupino. Not a hair, not a pellet. Was he hiding in the cemetery further down the road? That didn't seem like him. Lupino would betray him. But now Renato knew that. What would Lupino do if he knew that Lupino was going to betray him? Well, he'd concoct some crazy scheme, wouldn't he? That used Lupino's betrayal against him and it would blow up in space. Maybe he was overthinking this. Well, that would be a first. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renato's best friend in Sword Fu school. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she'd never told him who she really was. She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy. She won't give them up easily. She'll tell the interrogators, all right, said Lupino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. He hadn't noticed that path before. Was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. And there must be some way to play on that, Renato thought. Gogglers. Renato hated gogglers. It was almost impossible to sneak past them. If one didn't spot you, another one would. You blinked.
So, what's this plan of yours?
Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Renato hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Renato. Oh, go ahead. I'm sure you know better, said Lupino. Ooh, a workbench. Did he have any jewels he hadn't tried out? He had. Sensed the jewel's power. He had a feeling they were going to be great friends.
Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up at her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek. How soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She became smoke. And he noticed he had a blade to his throat. Stay a while, purred a familiar voice. Did you really think you could capture me? Zenobia said as her ship lifted off. Now I just wanted some privacy, Renato said. Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? And he told her why. His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him immortal. But to seal the bargain, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. You're lying. She was furious. You can't prove that. I can. And so, they set sail for the Nexus. The scientists at the observatory have resurrected one of his victims. Well, he's not exactly alive, but it can talk, and it can't lie. You took a big risk. You know, I could just cast a spell to make you tell me where the rebel base is, and you wouldn't consider that cheating? She frowned. Ugh, fine. Let's go get your witness. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. What else could you hook? Renato had a lot of crafting materials. Now all he needed was... She caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you want to join in? Oh, no, I'd destroy his books and... All right, I suppose I wouldn't. She stopped, troubled. He ran on. The scientists on this island had been investigating the Emperor's dark ritual on their own. They were neutral in the civil war engulfing the Empire, but they could see that the dark magics the old Toad had loosed were changing the world.
Renato hoped he and Zenobia weren't putting them in danger.
These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house. Please?
The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared around, shocked. The scientists had been neutral. They had no part in the rebellion. "Take me to your council," she said, shaken. "I have things to tell them." It was what Renato had gambled on. The Zenobia would turn against her father once she knew his madness. But the rebel base was secret. Could he really risk taking the Emperor's daughter there? Renato reached Lupino by Farspeaker Toad.
No. We should take her to the base.
Insisted Lupino. "No, I don't trust her. Nobody changes sides that fast," said Renato.
I better go to the base.
"Let them know you've got her," Lupino said. For some reason, Renato wasn't sure that was a good idea. "Just meet me at the far side of the mountains. There's a shuttle here I can take."
Always has to be your way, doesn't it?
Said Lupino. Zenobia was still shaking as they got out. "I didn't know," she said. "The Ravens kept it secret. At first they sacrificed prisoners, then villages near the frontier, and then an orphanage. Kittens and puppies. Sometimes he'd come back to the palace and it was like there were glowing things behind his eyes. I was so busy." "I'll clear a path for us," Renato told Zenobia, "so the Ravens don't see you."
Oh, good! I need a new rug for me nest, said the lead raven. This was much easier than free climbing. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles.
Zenobia came up as he massaged his sore arm. Her eyes were wet. He's been saying strange things. He asked me to do experiments, and some were wrong.
They are banished, right? Said Renato. Gone forever. I mean, he couldn't actually bring the old gods back, could he?
She didn't answer him. That frightened him more than anything.
Couldn't they have put in an elevator? Or a giant eagle? Or something? Boat crashes that were more fun.
Renato could feel his wounds closing. It was weird.
What was the point of this gate? Did they think no one would notice the lever? Renato wondered if he should have taken Zenobia to the rebel base for real. Maybe she wasn't playing him after all. After the bleak talk about the Emperor's dark secret, he was regretting his suspicion. They came up on an empty shack. He gestured her in. "Where's the base?" she asked, confused. "I thought we could talk a bit first."
Oh, you think I'm playing you? She was furious. I'm betraying my father who picked me out of an alley, and you think I'm playing you?
She lashed out. Her claws sliced fire into his face. Energy boiled in her other paw. But before she could kill him, he slashed his sword into her heart. She staggered. "I could have loved you, you son of a bitch." And then she died. Renato stood there for hours, unable to move. Finally, a ship landed near him. Lapino had brought the Farfarer. On board the Farfarer, Lapino couldn't stop grinning. "I can't believe you actually killed her." "Why didn't I trust her?" Renato said. All he could feel was emptiness. "You killed the Emperor's daughter. You might want to run for it, if you care whether you live or die, that is." Since Renato didn't, he grabbed the wheel, and he sailed for the Imperial fleet. Renato had never felt worse. Zenobia had listened to him. He'd trusted him. She'd opened her eyes to her father's evil. Done everything he had hoped for. He had taken her to a dirty shack. Was he so used to lying that he couldn't trust even the girl he had always loved? I wonder what happens if I go that way. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
He could see the rebels reeling back as he plunged into the ranks of the Ravens. He'd had to kill the girl he loved, but he'd also blown the biggest opportunity they could have had, to turn the Emperor's daughter against him. Oh, Renato could only laugh miserably. He was taking crazy chances now, swinging wildly. He expected the Ravens to take him at any moment, but they were running into him. No one wants to fight a man who doesn't care if he lives. No one wants to fight a hero. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails. Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Again. This time, he'd make an end of him. He'd screwed up last time, but he had a good feeling about this time. He was exhausted. Could barely think. He wanted to stop thinking. The rebels were already finished, and he was the last. The Ravens were coming for him personally now, in waves. It didn't matter. He was slick with his own blood, but it didn't matter. In the distance, he could see her, embraced by a halo of light, holding her hand out to him. Had she forgiven him? Would she take him to the halls of the Valiant? Then he felt steel in his belly, and his chest, and his back. And he lay down, and he couldn't see her anymore. He should go back to some of the choices he'd faced before. Maybe there were new paths that had opened up, like those doors he was opening up all over the map that took him to new treasures and around his enemies. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster,
Maybe he could find a way to use it. To take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. And he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. It would whisper promises in his ear, offer him power for blood. But this time, Renato was sure he could master it. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? What was he doing here? Last time, the stone had fought him for possession of his own soul.
Death to traitors!
Caught the ravens. Already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. Swell. He'd always wanted to do that. Renato. There was a pleasant breeze coming through that door. Had it been closed before? Tired of doing that. thought Renato.
Felt like Tarzan.
There had to be some way to use the Iblis stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Renato was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. Could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. Put the core, said the stone anxiously. But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it. The gem could give great power, but it was evil. But Renato had a plan. He would divide the stone into the power half and the evil half. He sought out the sage Calaveras.
Oh, you need a mirror of splitting,
croaked Calaveras.
I can make one.
Calaveras set up various shiny things. And soon Renato was setting the stone down in the middle of Calaveras' lab. There was a flash, and now Renato was looking at himself. Except with a mustache, and a goatee and darker hair. There were two Iblis stones. One light, and one dark. Renato took the light one. He felt a rush of great power. Now I could defeat the Emperor. Wait a minute. Unfortunately, he couldn't think of any way to use it without hurting someone. That wouldn't be nice.
Give me that.
set his evil-looking twin, and he drew his sword. He only got it halfway out of the scabbard when he fainted from the effort. Obviously, neither weak, evil Reynardo nor powerful, nice Reynardo was any threat to the Empire. After the Emperor's victory, they were exhibited in a museum until time ended, which was soon after. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in the buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. Burned fur. His. A chest that shiny deserved to be opened. People had laughed at the government workbench placement program, but you could see the benefits everywhere. There had to be some way to use the Iblis Stone. It was old, wasn't it? People are so much cleverer now. And Reynardo was pretty sure he was cleverer than most people. Lost could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. There was an inscription. Praised the sun.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? It was the stone, eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and he had a sneaking suspicion the gem would try to control him. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "What's the core?" said the stone anxiously.
But even though Renato knew how evil the gem was, he had a clever plan for dealing with it.
The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance.
The stone felt a bit clingy, and he had a feeling it did not have his best interests at heart. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power.
He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Renato had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Fu school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself. Except the biggest one. That she was the Emperor's daughter. No. Kill Zenobia, whispered the stone. Before it's too late.
Once, Renato had opened a chest, and Jack-in-the-Box jumped out. Jack-in-the-Boxes, they gave them the Wiggins.
There was something
sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
Say goodnight, Gracie, said Renard.
The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" "No, don't be ridiculous," it chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you so much as carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards.
Oh, you got such delicious looking eyeballs.
Caught the lead raven.
Thank you, I think, said Reynardo. It never hurt to be polite.
As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical.
No, it's too much power. We will rip a hole in space and time.
He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Reynardo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "You?" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer sailed towards the Nexus, Reynardo wondered if the core had been created to silence the stone, or even to feed its hunger. Honestly, he didn't care. He felt terrific, and he appreciated the quiet inside his head. The Nexus was infested with ravens, but that didn't bother Reynardo. With each death, the converted Iblis stone in his gauntlets glowed brighter, and he felt stronger. Wow. He was getting a bit bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Well, he wasn't worried. He was a warrior. They're supposed to be bloodthirsty. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. core, absorbed in the stone, was doing its job perfectly. Bernardo could feel a little eldritch jolt every time he downed a raven, but then it flowed into the glowing stone the way water flows down a riverbed. It all felt perfectly natural, as if all his life, this was what he had been meant to do. With the core absorbed in the stone, Bernardo had enough power to challenge the Imperial fleet. First, he would disrupt the enemy communication lines. Then he would head for the rebel base. From there, the rebellion would launch its final attack. Bernardo tore through the last remaining guards at the outpost like hot coffee through snow. There was a far speaker toad here. He called the council speaker. He knew she would be thrilled. And she was. She wanted him to come back to base. They had plans to discuss, and a medal to give him. A large, golden medal. Great, said Bernardo. Let's talk about who else I can kill. Then the far speaker croaked again.
Hello, Reynardo,
It said.
If you get sick of slaughtering second-rate birds in the Nexus, I'm waiting for you in the mountains.
Zenobia. She missed him. She loved him. Once she saw how awesome he'd become, maybe she'd join him. They'd kiss and... Well, if she did refuse for some reason, he was no match for him now. Zenobia was taunting him. No doubt she hoped to lure him into a trap. Well, he was nobody's sucker. Especially not hers. He carried victory in his gauntlet. He would go where the council pointed him. As he set foot on the island, Bernardo felt energized, like when he was hunting or dancing. Then he smelt it, the stench of ravens. It was a good thing he was here too, before they tripped over the secret base. He was really saving the council toad's bacon, so to speak. Haven't you always wanted to do that? Caught one, Raven. Eat the rebel! Caught another. The Ravens had reduced Ubar to rubble. Renato chuckled at the irony that it was now the secret rebel base.
See? Renato was a hero of the revolution. He deserved a medal. Soon, he deserved every medal they had, and hopefully one big medal ceremony in front of everybody with trumpets so everyone could know what he'd accomplished.
Anyone ever tell you have a lovely eye? No? Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
See? That little color looks good on you. The road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing.
Inside the rebel base, Renato was invited to the council speaker's private chambers.
So, this is the Iblis Stone?
He said.
I can feel its power.
Renato told her how he had fed the core to the stone and made something even more useful than either.
Crazy like a fox,
She croaked. And Renato chuckled as if he'd never heard the joke before.
We've given you the best quarters and a bottle of Tantalonian firewater. All for you.
So they'd remembered. He woke in the morning with the sweetest of hangovers.
But the Iblis stone was gone from his gauntlet.
The corridors were empty, except for a few rebels who looked just as hungover as him. Come on, you'll miss the battle, they yelled. Renato added sail as the Farfarers scudded across the sky. Who could have taken the Iblis stone? Was it some Imperial spy? He would find him, and kill him, and take the stone back.
Reynardo had a bad taste in his mouth. He was killing ravens, but it wasn't fun. It felt like a chore. Oh, Reynardo hated chores. As a fox kid, he'd gone hungry rather than clean his room. He still didn't clean his room, he just moved house every few years. Who had the Iblastone anyway? Up ahead, he could hear screaming and croaking and cawing. But who was winning? Reynardo had a feeling that was the back door to something. But what? As he ran forward, Reynardo noticed that some ravens were starting to ignore him. Just running away. Who were they running from? Some hero of the revolution? If some other so-called hero of the revolution had the stone and tried to take his victory and his medals, Reynardo was going to be seriously pissed off. He was the hero, not some other bozo. There was a sign. Take the goat across first. Finally, Reynardo came to the Emperor's ship. Zenobia lay dead in front of it. The ship was a wreck. Ravens lay dead, sprawled everywhere. Bloody feathers spattered across the deck and the dock. The council speaker came out. She was waving a sword around like a flag. "Look at me, Reynardo!" She croaked. The Iblastone on the sword was black as coal. "Now I will be Empress, and all shall tremble before me," she croaked. So the stone had her. It was in her brain, whining for blood. "I'm afraid I can't allow that," said Reynardo, and moved to fight her. Toads are not usually good with swords. Something about the footwork. And the council speaker was not even a warrior. She was always tripping over things, which was quite an impressive achievement when you're a toad. Yet somehow, she was pressing Reynardo backwards as he desperately tried to keep her sword away from his throat. "Look, why don't you keep the stone?" he asked. "You deserve it." "Blood and souls for Iblis," she croaked. "Blood and souls." She got under his guard with her sword. It was just the tip. But sometimes just the tip is enough. He could feel his soul being sucked into the stone. As he died, he felt embarrassed more than anything else.
Oh, again?
But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lupino.